Hey, I'm not sure my speakers are working. Can somebody talk for me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, it appears that we have all the board members signed on. Uh-oh. Okay, we have everybody present.
Patty, can I get a mic check on my audio? Can you hear me?
Hey, Chair, you're very muffled.
I had to switch off of my Surface Pro onto my iPad. Not working?
Hey, Chair, yeah, this is the host, Mike. I cannot hear you at this time. It's too distorted.
How's that? All right, I'll be back.
Hey, Chair, I had to meet you there. It was a spike and a lot of sound. Yeah, same thing. It's a lot of distortion.
Scott, what's it like without the headset?
You hear me? That's good. I can't hear you. Anybody talk?
Yeah, Scott, it's good. We can hear you.
Okay, beautiful.
The other thing I was going, yeah.
I won't use the headset then.
Yeah. The other thing is you can. Doug has this problem with Zoom calls. He calls him with his phone and then connects and then has the video. So
I do know. I've been on a call with them like that.
So there you go. Yeah.
Well, I already had to switch from my Surface Pro to my iPad because I had distortion on my Surface Pro earlier. So sorry. So I missed quite a bit there. Do we have a quorum, obviously? Are we waiting for anything other than me getting my audio figured out to start the meeting?
We are ready to start.
Okay, super. And I would like to call the meeting of the City of Santa Rosa Design Review Board to order on June 18th, 2020. Before we get into the formal agenda, I'd like to take a moment and explain why we're all here on Zoom. So due to the provisions of the governor's executive orders N-25-20 and N-29-20, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and the order of the health officer of the County of Sonoma to shelter in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19, board members will be participating by teleconference into the Design Review Board meeting of June 18th, 2020. And with that, take us to a roll call, please, Patty.
Let the record reflect that all board members are present except for Vice Chair Hitchcock.
Great, thank you very much. Item number 2 on tonight's agenda is approval of the minutes. Before you have the draft minutes from June 14th, 2020 regular meeting as item 2.1. Any comments or changes to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, we will go ahead and put those into record. Next item on the agenda is item 3, board business. This is where we differentiate ourselves from other boards and commissions in the city of Santa Rosa. This is coming from Zoning Code Chapter 20-52-030F, project review. The review authority shall consider the location, design, site plan configuration, and the overall effect of the proposed project upon surrounding properties and the city in general. Review shall be conducted by comparing the proposed project to the general plan, any applicable specific plan, applicable zoning code standards and requirements, consistency of the project within the city's design guidelines, architectural criteria for special areas, and other applicable city requirements, i.e. city policy statements and development plans. So that's purview of this board. Item number 4 on the agenda is public comment. This is a time when any person may address matters not listed on the agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction, i.e. the Design Review Board. Public may comment on the agenda item 6.1 when it is called, so we will have time for public comment on that specific item. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes during public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak in general about Design Review Board items?
We're sorting that out right now.
Okay.
Looks like we have a John Paulson with their hand raised. John, I'm going to go ahead and give you a permission to speak, and you'll have 3 minutes to do so.
Actually, I'm the appellate for the Minota Food Park.
Okay, we'll go ahead and hold you then.
Pardon me?
Can you hear us?
Patty, you're muted.
We're asking if anybody wishing to make a public comment, if you leave your hand raised, if you're part of an appellant or an applicant team, if you can lower your hand at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. At that time, it doesn't look like anybody else is raising their hands.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close general public comment, item number 4. And we'll move to statements of abstention by board members.
Actually, let me hold you real quick, Chair. We have a new person who just joined and they have their hand raised.
Okay.
And they're under Galaxy Note 8. I'm going to go ahead and give you permission to speak. You can unmute yourself at your leisure.
Thank you. This is Octavio Diaz.
No.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to make a general comment. I'm hopefully the future operator of Mitote Food Park. We're really excited to create jobs and get this project up and running. And I know there's been a lot of questions about the design review, and hopefully you can let this happen moving forward so we can move on with our lives. And I just want to wish everybody to stay safe, and hopefully everybody is.
Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Bill Rose, supervising planner. This is the point in the agenda where it's a discussion for items that are not on the agenda. I believe you're referencing an item that's on the agenda, and there will be a period of time in this meeting where you're able to talk on that. Just for clarity. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Right at this time, I do not see anybody. Wait, hold on a second. We have a couple people with their hand raised. If you can just give me a second, Chair.
Certainly.
All right, next we have a Bob Nellison with his hand raised.
Isn't he also associated with the project?
Yes, I'd like to ask one more time, if you are part of the applicant or appellant team, please lower your hand. This portion of the agenda is for items not on the agenda, and we'll have a public comment, public hearing time at the time of the agenda of the item review. So Mr. Nelson, if you could lower your hand.
Thank you, Patty. With that, Chair Kincaid, we do not have anyone else raising their hand.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We will go ahead and close public comment. And
1 second, Chair. We do have a voicemail and we have to play for you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and keep public comment open.
Is that not on public comment? I'm just holding off. That's actually for item 4.1. So we are clear to thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Closing public comment, item number 4. And moving on to item number 5, statements of abstention by board members. Do we have any board members who need to abstain from the single item 6.1 this afternoon?
Yes, this is board member Cordenbrock. I would need to abstain from the item on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, board member Cordenbrock. I appreciate you taking the time to join us and let us know that you are abstaining from the item. So with that, we'll see you next time.
Great, thanks all.
Any other board members needing to abstain? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the scheduled item. Item number 6.1 is a public appeal hearing, minor design review, Plaza Temporal, at 665 Sebastopol Road, Mitote Food Park, appeal of zoning administrator action granting minor design review, file number DR19030. A little bit more about this item. On January 16th, 2020, the zoning administrator approved a minor design review application for Plaza Temporal Mitote Food Park. The approval was appealed by John Paulson, the appellant, and is now before us, the design review board, this afternoon. Like all appeals, we've got an order of business to follow, and we will start with ex parte disclosures by the board. Any board members need to make any disclosures? Seeing no one, I do not have any either. So our first item of business under the appeal is a staff presentation. I'd like to welcome planner Sherry Meads and staff to go ahead and make that presentation for us.
Good evening, Chair Kincaid and members of the board. I'm Sherry Meads, City Planner, and it is a pleasure to be virtually before you tonight. The item before you tonight is an appeal of zoning administrator approval of a minor design review application for the Plaza Temporal Mitote Food Park. Next slide, please. The project is located in the southwest quadrant of Santa Rosa within the Roseland neighborhood. The site is south of State Highway 12, west of Dutton Avenue, and east of Roseland Avenue. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial that shows the existing site. The site's northern property line extends entirely along the County of Sonoma's Joe Rodata Trail. There are 2 parcels that span the project site north of the Joe Rodata Trail, with the westerly parcel currently undeveloped and the easterly parcel developed as a freight terminal. The site is bound by Sebastopol Road to the south. The parcels across Sebastopol Road are fully developed with commercial uses, with the nearest residential development located directly behind those commercial parcels. There are 3 parcels that border the western boundary of the site. The most northerly of these parcels is developed with a commercial use. The center parcel is owned by CDC and will be developed as part of the Roseland Village Affordable Housing Development. The most southerly of the 3 parcels, which fronts on Sebastopol Road, is currently developed as a Foster's Freeze restaurant. 2 parcels border the eastern boundary of the site. The most northerly of these is currently being converted into a Vertex climbing center and warehouse space, and the other parcel is developed as the Roseland Village Shopping Center, which has a mix of commercial uses. Next slide, please. So the Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park is a proposal that will occupy 12,730 square feet on a 6.1 acre Sonoma County Community Development Commission owned parcel. The Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park will be a temporary plaza and gathering space that includes a counter service restaurant, outdoor seating, alcohol service, customer restrooms, 3 dedicated spaces for rotating mobile food vendors, landscaping, and site improvements. Next slide, please. And for context, this Matote Food Park, Plaza Temporal, that we're looking at tonight is part of a larger Roseland Village mixed-use development that has already received its entitlements. It's already been approved. What we're looking at today is a temporary installation that will be on parcel A, as you can see on this map, which will eventually be developed as a public plaza. And I'll get more into that later. So the project is a component of the approved development, which in its entirety will occupy 5 lots on about 7.5 acre site. Right now, there is a commercial building, Dollar Tree, which will be removed, and a playground, which will be removed. Next slide, please. This is just a concept rendering of Roseland Village as a whole, and you can see the bright, colorful space fronting Sebastopol Avenue, which is where the Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park will be located while the subdivision infrastructure and streets are developed. The project is intended to act, as I mentioned, as an interim community gathering space at the start of construction, and the Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park will be removed for the completion of the more permanent plaza and mercado components during the 3rd phase of construction of Roseland Village. Next slide, please. So the project it's been envisioned since the start of the Roseland Village entitlement process. I've highlighted some of the relevant history that incorporates the Roseland Village history, since this is a component of the project. Probably the most important things on this slide are to note that Sonoma County Development Commission acquired this property back in 2011. And in 2018, they held a neighborhood meeting at the Roseland Library on site, where the attendees were talking about the public plaza even at that time. And on February 28th, 2019, the Planning Commission approved the proposed tentative map and density bonus. Next slide, please. The appellant for this project also appealed the Planning Commission's action. However, the City Council upheld the prior approvals, and that was in June of 2019. So the council by resolution denied the appeal, affirming the Planning Commission action. The Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park had its first application back in April of 2019. And all of the regular noticing went out to people, and the appellant in December of 2019 asked that the item be elevated to a public hearing. It would normally have been held, being a minor design review project, in front of the zoning administrator as a public meeting. However, this appellant asked for it to be elevated to a public hearing, which it was. Next slide, please. So on January 16, 2020, the zoning administrator granted minor design review approval for the Plaza Temporal Matote food project. And a week later, within the 10-day period, John Paulson filed an appeal of the zoning administrator action in a timely manner, which brings us here. Next slide, please. So the Roseland area specific, Sebastopol Road specific plan and the Santa Rosa general plan both provide a split land use designation for the site, allowing retail and business services and or medium density residential, which allows retail and service enterprises, offices and restaurants, or residential development with a density of 8 to 18 units per acre. So this project is definitely, it conforms to general plan requirements. Next slide, please. The project furthers several general plan goals and policies, and I've highlighted some of them here. I'll read a couple of them. For land use and livability, to create a pedestrian-friendly streetscape with a distinctive ambiance on Sebastopol Road from Stony Point Road to Olive Street. Support a vibrant commercial corridor along Sebastopol Road with a mix of uses and activities that celebrate the area's uniqueness. Establish a defined center such as a park, school, neighborhood, shopping center, or a transit stop at the core of large residential projects, which this is a temporary installation, but will eventually be the permanent plaza, if you will, which meets that description. For arts and culture, develop outdoor locations that encourage cultural events for the enjoyment of the citizens, as well as to attract tourism. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The project is located within the Roseland area Sebastopol Road specific plan area and the Roseland priority development area. The Roseland area Sebastopol Road specific plan is a planning level document that addresses land use, circulation, and infrastructure needs for the area. Next slide, please. The project furthers many of the goals and policies of the Roseland area Sebastopol Road specific plan, and I've highlighted several of them here. And it's important to note that the plan looks at things such as providing social gathering places in commercial areas, retaining and encouraging businesses that promote Roseland's unique identity, preserving the rich cultural uniqueness and sense of place as new development occurs in the area, and to continue to support existing businesses and future entrepreneurial opportunities along Sebastopol Road. Next slide, please. And here's even more reasons that it fits the plan. It supports a vibrant commercial corridor along Sebastopol Road with a mix of uses and activities. It encourages outdoor dining along Sebastopol Road and allows mobile food vendors at off-street locations along Sebastopol Road. Next slide, please. Zoning for the site is general commercial, which is appropriate for a range of retail and service land uses, including shops, personal and business services, and restaurants. The commercial general zoning district is consistent with the general plan retail and business services land use classification. Restaurants are allowed by right in the general commercial zoning district, and minor design review subject to zoning administrator approval is required based on the Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park total floor area encompassing less than 10,000 square feet. And that confuses some people, but floor area pursuant to zoning code section 20-70.020 is defined as the entire area within the walls of a building measured in a horizontal plane from the outside edge of exterior wall to exterior wall in square feet. The commercial general zoning district does not provide for a minimum or maximum lot size or lot dimension, and there are no required setbacks for projects that are not adjacent to a residential zone. Maximum lot coverage within a commercial general zone is 100%, and the maximum height limit is 55 feet. The Plaza Temporal Matote Food Park will be located within Lot A of the approved Roseland Village tentative map and complies with any and all required development standards. Next slide, please. The project furthers it meets many of the city's design guidelines, and I've highlighted again a few of them here. Neighborhood design to encourage all elements of the streetscape, adjacent buildings, medians, and all of that. It all works together so that it's a very pleasant streetscape to add to Sebastopol Road. Building materials adjacent to pedestrian walkways are to be pedestrian friendly, authentic, rich in detail with visual interest and durable. And I think you'll find that the project meets that. Next slide, please. So here's a site plan for the Plaza Temporal. It will be developed on 12,730 square feet of a paved vacant lot. The primary pedestrian entrance, oops, did I not say next slide, please?
You're good, Sherry. Is this a slide that you want to be on?
No. Next, go to later. That one. Thank you. The plaza area will be developed on 12,730 square feet of a paved vacant lot. And the primary pedestrian entrance to the project is on Sebastopol Road, and parking is located on the east side of the site. Vehicular access is provided from the existing signalized intersection at West Avenue and Sebastopol Road. The project will include 25 standard and 2 ADA parking spaces, in addition to quite a bit of street parking on Sebastopol Road. 14 bicycle parking spaces will be located in the northeast corner of the site. Next slide, please. And this is a temporary and long-term access and circulation plan to show that access from West Avenue and Sebastopol Road will be maintained throughout, the construction and long-term. And you can see that there is always access provided easterly from that intersection to parcels located to the east of the project. Next slide, please. So this is what it will look like from Sebastopol Avenue. I mean, in a very bare bones kind of way. You can see on the left-hand side is one of the shipping containers that will be one of the 2 restrooms provided for patrons on site. On the right, you can see the shipping container that will be modified into a bar with walk-up service. And there will be a nice little entry defining feature with signage that you can see up in the little tiny thumbnail. It's not included with this project because in all cases, signage is a separate permit is required. Next slide, please. This gives you an idea of what the image on the right is an example of how someone has modified a shipping container to be a walk-up counter service kind of establishment. And on the left-hand side, you can see what the actual bar elevation and floor plan will be like. And the structural elements of the project are minimal by design, with the proposed intermodal shipping containers being durable by design. Next slide, please. And the project makes effective use of complementary materials, textures, and colors throughout the site. The structural elements are minimal, and the enclosed site incorporates seating areas, planter boxes, box trees for shade and aesthetic value, and catenary lighting will be used to define space. Next slide, please. Here's a site plan just to give you an aerial view of what it will look like with the patternation overlaid on top, to give you an idea of how the colors and the textures of the site will enhance the area. Next slide, please. The project incorporates seating areas, planter boxes, and box trees for shade and aesthetic value, and it will meet all the requirements of the city's water efficient landscape ordinance. And here's pictured in one of the Avalo planter boxes as an example of how they can use the space to grow food that could be used by the restaurant and just be lovely. Next slide, please. Here's an example of the overhead lighting, and the image on the right is the 48-inch height wire mesh and wood fence that will surround the perimeter of the site. All the lighting will meet city requirements for safety pursuant to Santa Rosa Zoning Code, section 20-30.080, outdoor lighting. Next slide, please. So throughout the process of this application, there has been public comments, including up into the zoning administrator hearing. And most of the comments related to alcohol service and the potential for increased incidences of disorderly conduct. A lot of concern was expressed about how food packaging waste from existing food trucks have ended up in residential neighborhoods and commercial properties. People were concerned about increased traffic, noise, that there were already quite a few mobile food vendors, and that Sebastopol Road is the only place in the city where they are permitted to line the streets. We had a gentleman express concern that this project might provide competitive advantage over existing mobile food vendors and brick and mortar restaurants. Early on, there was concern that the project was not representative or inclusive of Roseland's multicultural heritage, concerns about security, feeling that the project may not promote a family atmosphere, wondering how the selection process for the 3 rotating mobile food vendors will be done. And John Paulson and legal counsel Robert Nellison claim that the project will destroy a recorded reciprocal easement for access and parking. Next slide, please. And some of staff's responses to the public concerns would be that the alcohol consumption area will have a controlled perimeter, and alcohol will be served only when food is being offered for sale. The project must meet all the requirements of the California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control licensing and sales for on-site alcohol consumption and sales. Trash, recycling, and compost receptacles will be distributed throughout the fully enclosed site, and there'll be an enclosed and screened trash, recycling, and compost area, which will be serviced by Recology regularly. So we're hoping and anticipating that this will actually reduce any impacts that trash maybe have had in the past on this area. And the traffic impact study for the Roseland Village project found that the traffic operation is anticipated to remain acceptable after considering the Roseland Village project in its entirety. So this project did not require any additional study because it was already done with the originally approved entitlements. Project will be subject to all noise requirements, and mobile food vending. We have a city ordinance that allows mobile food vending on private property located within the general commercial zoning district that has street frontage on Sebastopol Road between Stony Point and Olive Street. Next slide, please. Additionally, the applicant has stated that they're interested in working with existing mobile food vendors and restaurants in a mutually beneficial manner. The applicant plans to include mobile food vendors that offer diverse cuisine options. And the design concept intends to make the site visible in terms of security. The site will be fully enclosed with a 4-foot high fence, and there'll be low planters flanking the entry gate and main pedestrian entrance. So everything's going to be very visible. It'll be well lit with there's some parking lot lighting that will exist, and they will add more lighting if it's needed. The project will provide a temporary space for gathering and the enjoyment of food. So we're hoping that it does become a family friendly place. And the long-term goal for the spot is to provide a public venue for community events, arts and culture, farmers market, things such as that. And in terms of the concern of how the rotating mobile food vendors will be chosen, the applicant will probably have more to say about this, but only operators that possess required permits and licensing will be considered. Next slide, please. So the grounds for Mr. Paulson's appeal, the first one mentioned is the existing recorded and prescriptive easements for Roseland Village lessees and patrons being destroyed. And he was concerned that the original plans that were submitted did not include a width for the northerly street from West Street to his property east of the project site. And staff's response is that the grant of reciprocal easement, which was recorded in 1956, does not describe a specific location for vehicular parking or driveway uses on the site. And the subject easement is a private agreement between CDC and Mr. Paulson. The city is not party to the agreement, nor does the city have authority to regulate land use limited by the easement. The applicants and the Office of County Council have stated that the easement does not restrict the ability to proceed with project development on the property. And all of this has been evaluated, looked at in the early entitlements for the Roseland Village project. So next slide, please. Mr. Paulson cites that the county has shown gross indifference to maintenance of its property in the last 9 years, that there are neither community safeguards nor care conditions for the security and cleanliness. And he suggested that the project be relocated to the old Lucky concrete pad and that the recorded and prescriptive easements be obeyed. And so, like I mentioned earlier, garbage recycling and compost receptacles will be located throughout the site. The site will have regular garbage, waste, and compost pickup from Recology. The restaurant operator will maintain the area within the food park boundaries. The applicant has committed to maintaining the parking lot and providing any cleaning and security measures that are needed. And the project will comply with all local, state, federal law, regulation, and orders, including those, as mentioned, of the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. Next slide, please. The proposed project has been reviewed in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and the project qualifies for a Class 4 exemption pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15304E. The project meets the criteria for this Class 4 exemption, minor alterations to land, in that the project is temporary and will have negligible or no permanent effects on the environment. The city has further determined that no exceptions to the exemptions apply, and there is no reasonable possibility the activity will have a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. Next slide, please. And with that, the Planning and Economic Development Department and the Zoning Administrator recommend that the Design Review Board by resolution deny the appeal and grant minor design review approval for the Plaza Temporal Machote Food Park. Next slide, please. I'm here to answer any questions, and the appellant has a team ready to answer questions and explain things as well after their presentation.
Thank you, Planner Meads, for the presentation. What I'd like to do now is go through the board members and see if we have any questions for staff. We'll go in the reverse order this evening. So Mr. Wicks, Board Member Wicks, do you have any questions for staff?
I have a couple. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Sherry, thank you very much for the clear, concise presentation on the project and the facts. As I was looking at the history of the project, is it true we have not seen the overall Round Barn Village project as a whole before this board?
The Roseland Village project, each individual component will be subject to its own design review process, but it was seen as a concept review design early in the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably before my time, but I didn't notice that. So in the future, we'll see this project come before us in the individual components.
Correct.
You've also stated this is a temporary use. What is the use permit length for this project?
The project is permitted by right as a restaurant, so it does not need a use permit. The applicant has stated that it will remain in place with, possibly some of the elements being included in the more permanent plaza. They're anticipating it going away before phase 3 of construction, so they're anticipating 3 to 5 years.
Okay, and there's, I guess it's premature to ask what it's going to look like in the future. Why? My question is why it would be replaced? Why wouldn't it be something that was
I think
incorporated into the future design?
I think certain elements will be, but I'll let the applicant go more into that. I know that they plan open space and certain other things, but they'll be far better at answering the future question.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, now we'll go on to Board Member Weigel. Weigel, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I just have one. As I was going through all the documentation earlier today, I was trying to understand the circulation component. I guess maybe that'll get answered by appellant, I suppose. But Sherry, could you describe that a little bit better to me? I think I'm understanding it in terms of the diagram that's in your presentation on your temporary and long-term access and circulation. I imagine it's probably the connection to the adjacent parcel on the east.
Correct.
Okay, and that's also connected with both the blue temporary circulation and the red permanent circulation that was, I guess, part of a tentative map or something that might have been approved by the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay, so I think it's good to note that the red has already been approved by the Planning Commission via tentative map. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I think that's a critical element as we look at the location of the park and the parking and what's actually kind of approved and we can't move around. So that's very important. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Thanks so much. That answers my question.
You're very welcome.
Board Member Sharon, questions for staff?
I have no questions for staff at this time, but Scott, I do have a question for you. So you mentioned that since this is an appeal, it's a special order of operations that we're going on. And last week when we had an appeal, you delineated for the public and whoever's listening how that's going to go. And I think I might answer some of our questions if there's the staff and then the response and just the timing. Could you go over that for everyone who's listening?
Sure. Good point. So the order of the meeting, staff presentation is what we just heard. Then we'll hear from the zoning administrator who will tell us about his decision to grant approval at the zoning administrator meeting. That's, just a brief overview. Then the applicant will have a presentation, which will be held to 15 minutes. Then the appellant will have a presentation, also held to 15 minutes. And then the applicant will be able to respond to the appellant's presentation and we'll have 10 minutes to do so. And at each one of these levels, we'll have questions for the presenter, as it were. Then we'll hear from the public. So we'll open up to public comment for this item. After that, we will have questions and general questions after all those special questioning sessions. And then we'll go ahead and try and get to a decision.
Great, thanks. I thought hearing the timing in particular, because it's different from our normal operation, would be useful.
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That's it for me now.
Okay, Board Member Goldschlag, questions for staff?
Yeah, I just have one and it might be for Bill. And it may be good for the public to hear what the scope of our review is. And I know some of the answers, but I mean, there's been a lot of great questions that have been posed by not only the appellant, but by the public in regards to security, insurance, trash, and it's not the first time we've dealt with trash on this board for sure. And why the naming of this park. So maybe Bill, if you can review for us what our scope is, and that way the public can also hear what items we can address and what items are outside of our purview and maybe something more for the Planning Commission.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as you've seen in the history, this project has been through a number of actions already. So the land use has been established for this site. What you have before the board is a design review application. So the scope is focused just on design review. That's this board's purview. But the one thing about an appeal hearing is that they're considered de novo. So that means of new. So it's essentially a new design review action tonight. So there's not really a restriction on the scope of the design review. It's just that it is limited only to design review tonight. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it. That was my only question. Thank you.
And I had a question along the similar lines, so thank you for that, Eric. With that, I'd like to welcome the zoning administrator, Mr. Andy Gustafson, who will give us a little overview of his decision-making process.
Thank you very much. This is Andy Gustafson, and I was acting zoning administrator at the hearing on January 16th, January 18th, 16th, 2020 of this year. So this meeting was conducted as a public hearing after it was duly noticed. The meeting was opened by myself, and after the introduction, Ms. Meads, the project planner, gave her report. She used exhibits and such to show the project, how it would, and described its operation, and reviewed the findings of the recommended resolution of approval that she had presented at that meeting. After the conclusion of her presentation, the applicant was given opportunity to speak and add information and so forth. During this time, I asked clarifying questions to help to ensure that the presentation and the information that was being presented was clear. And to be clear about the actual action on this project, how it related to this minor design review related to the larger project that had only 6 months before approximately been brought before the community and ultimately the city council when they took action on the Roseland Village tentative map and density bonus. So I strove to make a clear distinction between that previous project and this design review for the Metote food park. The important points that were addressed in the presentation by staff was to show that the project is consistent with the general plan land use and the Roseland area Sebastopol specific plan, that its location and on the site would be consistent with the zoning development standards, which allow for a restaurant use of this type, as you were previously told by Sherry Meads, project planner. And then also exhibited clearly that the project had superior design consistent with the design review guidelines. The applicant, as I said, overviewed the project and showed how this site would be occupied by the temporary use where the Mercado market would be planned and where the public plaza would be planned, and that it would be there during the phase 1 of the Roseland Village project that would see the installation of infrastructure, road circulation, and such. After that presentation, the hearing was open to the public for comments, and I'll just quickly go through the comments that were presented. You heard them previously. There was concern about trash and parking impacts in the surrounding neighborhood, that the new outdoor dining park would be competition for the mobile food service trucks across the street, that there would be a over-concentration of alcohol establishment, that the use itself would attract crime and degrade public safety in the area by virtue, in part, of alcohol, that it would attract homelessness and drug use, and that the project came before the ZA with a lack of public input or time for the public to provide input. And then that the plans that were presented were inadequate, not properly drawn to scale for the type of decision or type of use that was being proposed. And finally, the matter regarding the project would violate or encroach upon the private parking access easement that existed over the larger Roseland Village project site. As everyone in the room that participated, there was a fair number of people in the audience, had opportunity to speak. Once that concluded, I closed the public meeting and called upon the project planner and the applicant to address most of the comments that were raised to try to clarify how the project would operate on the site. I did respond to the private easement issue that was raised and explained that That was a private legal matter that was brought up during the course of the Roseland Village project, and that it was, as a public planning issue, a matter that could not be addressed, that the entitlement that was approved by council ultimately on appeal for the tentative map and the density bonus established that the future development of that site had the potential to comply with parking requirements that the city had, and also would provide sufficient or adequate access for emergency vehicles and the trips that would be generated by the project in the surrounding area, including the neighboring property owner who is also under the reciprocal access circulation easement. So with that, I was able to approve the project based on the evidence in the record, subject to conditions that were recommended by staff. All the findings were made necessary for the minor design review. Most notably is the, besides the design that you're going to be considering tonight, I would just call to your attention that the finding regarding that the project would not have an adverse impact on the use and enjoyment of the property in the area, which really gets at the issue of much of the comments that was raised by the public regarding trash, traffic, public safety, and those matters. So with that, the proposed minor design review was approved, and the applicant and the public were informed of the appeal date, and I closed the public hearing. I'm available for comments or questions, I should say, at this time.
Great, thank you for the thorough presentation, much appreciated. Questions for the zoning administrator? Anybody? Okay. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to the applicant. This is Sonoma County Community Development Commission team. And I would ask that each presenter within the team, if there are more than one, introduce themselves by name and their relation to the project before they begin speaking. That'd be very helpful in this venue. And with that, we'll go ahead and wait for the applicant presentation to get going, and we'll start the 15-minute clock, and we'll do our best to hold it to 15 minutes, but certainly won't cut you off midstream. Board Member Weigel, you have a question?
Yes, Chair Kincaid. I just wanted to clarify, since we heard the appeal on another project last week, is the same element true that if you are a member of either the applicant team or the appellant team, that you may not also be a speaker from the public when we open up public comment? Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. So under appeal, because you're given time to present as an applicant and appellant and time to then respond as an applicant to the appellant's presentation, if you are speaking for either the applicant or the appellant team, you then are disqualified, if you will, from the 3 minutes of public speaking. So choose your time wisely, either 3 minutes of public speaking or as part of the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask staff to load the applicant's presentation and get the applicant team ready to go on the mics.
Chair Kincaid, this is Paul Osmondson from the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. Fellow board members, thank you for the opportunity to make our presentation. Next slide, please. The CDC is the staff did a great job in presenting the project. Sherry Meads has been tremendous and I think did an outstanding job. The team that we've selected for the master development of this site is led by Mid-Penn Housing. They're one of the leading affordable housing developers in all of the Bay Area. They put together a great consulting team made up of Van Meter Williams, who you'll hear from later, BKF and Quadriga, whom I know work in Santa Rosa extensively, and Emerald City is the MEP engineer. Next slide, please. We selected Octavio Diaz and his company, Notre Mera, to be the operator for the Plaza Temporal project. He's a very experienced restaurant and food Sonoma County resident. He has 4 locations already. He knows this area, knows the neighborhood. He's engaged a local architect whom you also are probably familiar with, and an environmental designer to design the tenant improvements. Basically, the CDC is building the infrastructure for the Plaza Temporal, and Octavio Diaz is the operator. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Williams from Van Meter Williams, and he'll walk through the more details on the design.
Thank you very much, Paul. If you could go to the next slide. Again, this is Rick Williams with Van Meter Williams Pollock. We're the architects for the development, for this portion of the development, as well as the affordable housing. Thank you, Sherry, for your thorough presentation. I just want to go over a few items to describe the project in further detail. This is the overall master plan as approved. The Plaza Temporal will be the first phase of realizing Roseland Village, and it will also be the first phase of the public improvements. We've located it so that it will be a vibrant piece of the community, a gathering space for the community during, before, during, and after the construction of the streets, the park, the affordable housing, and the market rate housing and other community facilities. The location of it will be in kind of the center of parcel A, and the parking area adjacent will be in essence where lot 4 is at the Mercado. So that when you look at the other plans, you'll see it in that location. Next, please. This is how it fits within that overall master plan. There's the future private park. There's the future affordable and market rate housing. And it will be surrounded by West Avenue, C Street, and B Street. It will have the temporary parking on the site where the eventual Mercado building will go. And then the plaza sits in the center of the overall private public park. So it's right along Sebastopol Road and faces it. Next, please. Here's the existing conditions. It will be located between the existing play area, which you see on the photo on the bottom left, and Sebastopol Road. And it will be allowed to use some of the existing parking after it is built around it in the interim before the before the streets are built. If you could go to the next slide. As we focus closer in, you can now see how it fits within the existing parking area facing Sebastopol Road with the new parking built along it. It's really located so that it can be, so that the construction can occur afterwards. And you can also see it in relation to all of the other parking and circulation, which will be able to be retained until the other streets are built and under construction, and we'll be able to use the parking as part of the park area and the surrounding parking while construction is going on. So we shouldn't have a disruption or too great a loss of the parking. We'll be able to use different areas during the overall construction. Next, please. This is really the crux of the location of the overall Plaza Temporal and the parking. You can see where the future park will be, the existing parking. The circulation in the blue will be the current circulation, and there will be enough area distance between Plaza Temporal and the play area, which is approximately 25 feet at its closest point. If it turns out that we have to move that a little bit, we can move some of the barriers slightly, and we'll work with the city on that. But we believe that we have the 25 feet, and actually by code, we would only need 20 feet for the circulation in that area. But you can also see how other circulation will be provided, access to the parking lot, and then also in the red, the future circulation, which is part of the tentative map and also has adjacent on-street parking being built within it. So this is really located and designed to fit within the project, so it can work before construction, it can work during the construction, and it will work after the streets and the park are built and as the affordable housing and market rate housing and other community facilities are constructed. Next, please. This is in greater detail, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of the locations of different elements. Again, Sebastopol Road on the bottom. We have the parking on the right. The main entry is at Sebastopol Road. The container bar is on the right-hand side, and the restrooms are on the left-hand side. There'll be an access point from the parking as well. There'll be two large gathering areas. One will be separately fenced off as required by ABC law, and then the family location on the other side is adjacent to where the rotating food trucks would be. And there will be a variety of food trucks, as was mentioned in the original presentation. And then up on the top right-hand side is a trash enclosure. It is fenced. It has solid walls to screen it, and then it also has a roof over the top. So it'll be a secure trash enclosure large enough to hold all of the different trash elements that Recology requires, and it would be necessary for the facility. Next, please. Actually, if you wouldn't mind going back for just 1 second to the last plan, I'll just highlight a couple of other things. We mentioned previously the very colorful design of the groundscape, which this is temporary, but we wanted to create bright colors for the community. There's picnic benches and seating and the landscaping that was previously mentioned, as well as the lighting, which will be over the top of the project. But we're trying to make this a vibrant, exciting, colorful location, espousing to its temporary nature. But as people have mentioned, pieces of it may be retained for a while during the life of the community center. If we can go to the next slide then. The elevation here shows the entry gateway feature with a guard arch, and that will have some separate signage on it. On the right-hand side is the bar container, which will be brightly painted. And then on the left-hand side is the restroom container, as Sherry had also mentioned, and you can kind of get a sense of what the appearance would be with the low fencing all the way around, so that it's also very transparent. The trees in the background, and then the real poles that will come up and hold the catenary lighting that proceeds throughout and will light the entire area. Next, please. These are some of the elements. This is an example of the bar container. The restroom container looks similar. It'll have handicap accessibility. There will be colorful elements in the courtyard. The planters and then some large box trees will be brought in for shade and general landscaping to have a nice character and quality about it. The umbrellas with will match some of the colors in the hardscape with the picnic tables. And overall, we wanted it to be a bright and cheery place someplace the kids would have fun. The lighting will provide a nice atmosphere as well in the evenings. And we think overall it'll be a fun place for families to gather from the neighborhood through the community. Next, please. And someone asked how it would fit in with the overall development. The original image showed it with the parking on the right-hand side. Enclosing the Plaza Temporal has it'll really be a tremendous community gathering space. It kind of gets the gathering going before you have all the construction of all the other buildings and everything, so that it'll be part of the community when the new residents are able to move in. This anticipates that the Mercado, when built, may have the ability to extend out into the plaza, maybe replacing the bar container and some of the other facilities. But it could work in partially together, though we do anticipate that it'll have new elements and have new features as part of the finished park area. And this kind of shows how it will be an attractive element in the near term, the midterm, and in the future for the community, for the residents, and for everyone in the wider Roseland area, as well as the residents of Roseland Village. And with that, we'd like to pass it back to Paul, who will outline a little bit more on the schedule and some of the key points along the way as we realize the rest of this project. Paul?
As we bounce back to Paul, I just wanted to alert the applicant team that I've got about 3 minutes remaining in the presentation timeline.
Right on schedule.
Great.
Thanks, Rick. Next slide, please. This is Paul Osmundson from the CDC. Rick did a great job of explaining that how the Plaza Temporal will function and relate to all those different components on either side and around it. We covered this past major milestones. We are doing an environmental cleanup. There was a contamination on a portion of the property from a dry cleaner. We've got a grant from the water board and are doing that work on the back half of the site. Next slide, please. So going forward, the Boys and Girls Club has relocated from the building that the Dollar Tree is in. The Sonoma County Library has suspended operations temporarily, but will resume under the shelter-in-place order with some modified work. The Dollar Tree store is closing this month. We expect in the fall to complete the construction of Plaza Temporal and begin the operations later this fall once the construction of that phase is complete. Next spring, we would demolish the Dollar Tree store and the old Roseland hardware store and would commence building the public infrastructure, the roads, the sidewalks, the utilities, and the green space portion of the public plaza. And then later next year and into 2022, Mid-Penn Housing and their partner Urban Mix would go through the process of building the affordable and market rate housing. The final two pieces which aren't on here are the Civic building and the Mercado building. We don't have a firm date for when those are going to go forward, but when we do have the specific design of those buildings, those will be coming back, as Andy and Sherry indicated, to the design review board for design. That's the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you, Paul and Rick, for the presentation and for keeping it within the timeline. Much appreciated. Questions for the applicant. Let's start with board member Wicks. Questions for the applicant? No. Board member Weigel, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the phasing. I think the image that you showed at the end, the kind of the 3D or the bird's eye view, indicating the Mercado and then the two proposed housing projects and then the civic component. It looked like there were, I guess the idea is that Plaza Temporal is very much temporary, but also you'd like to incorporate it moving forward. I guess there's some, from the original site plan to that bird's eye, I'm just a little confused if that, you're going to build the infrastructure, it's going to stay there, and then you're going to try to tie it all together. Am I understanding that correctly?
This is Paul Osmondson. That's exactly correct. The very first phase after Temporal is building the streets and sidewalks and the public plaza. So in that bird's eye view, the footprint of the future Mercado building will be a parking lot. And so eventually, as you saw in the bird's eye view, and Rick covered it in his presentation, portions of the Plaza Temporal may in fact remain permanently, but we didn't want to spend too much money up front on something that we weren't sure about. And some of the features of Temporal will be replicated in the Mercado building. So we kind of wanted to, it's purposefully vague, if that's a legitimate description, where we're not sure what we're going to keep, but it is one of the features that we do think makes sense long-term is that hardscape area adjacent to the Mercado building makes sense so that the plaza can really be more of a softscape and a play area so that outdoor seating and performances and things of that nature would naturally take place on the quote unquote Plaza Temporal footprint. So if we do make modifications in the future, those would be part of one of these other future phases.
Thank you. That clarifies it for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Board Member Sharon, questions for the applicant?
Sure, a couple of quick questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just to clarify, the detailing is great, but to clarify the colorful ground plane to delineate space, I assume it's just paint on existing asphalt. You're not going to be replacing anything.
That is correct.
Okay. The family area also is going to be the existing asphalt?
Yes, with the existing painted area.
Okay, great. Thank you. I like the use of the Avalo planter boxes, nice detail and local company, which is always great. And I do have a question about the 48 and 8-inch box trees. It's called out as that the 48-inch box will be painted. I'm just wondering if the plan is to just reuse the box that coming from the nursery, or what is the detail? There's no detail for the 48-inch box trees in particular.
Yes, actually, we were going to just paint the box trees, the boxes that they come in. We kind of wanted it to take that temporary element. That might be one item that if it wasn't eventually planted in that location, it might be something where it's planted in a higher quality pot if it was to remain there for a longer period of time. But we would anticipate that eventually those box trees, as they grow, might end up in the ground at some point. But at this point, we wanted to kind of have a little bit of that temporary character to it, so it felt like it was something that popped up, it's here, and that eventually it will change.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a great, statement of temporary use. Yeah, I mean, and I'm certain you guys will choose as you go when you're choosing your boxes. But coming from industrial nurseries, the boxes might not be the safest things in the world with nails sticking out and metal too. Yeah. So, I do appreciate it's making a statement of temporariness. So
yes.
And those are my questions. Thank you for clarifying.
Board Member Goldschlag, questions for the applicant?
Sorry, I had to find my mouse. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple quick questions. One, would you mind taking us through how you settled on a 48-inch high fence in the design?
We looked at a couple of different fences because we did think of it as being temporary, and we explored using a chain link fence and as kind of the most temporary version of fencing. But and then we thought we might augment that with colorful slats. But through conversations with the city, they really wanted it to have a little bit higher quality. And since we had the other wood planters and things, they felt that more of a wood fence, which was one of our other options that we had kind of early on considered, and they wanted it to be transparent. We wanted to use the wire mesh so that it gave that little bit of industrial farmland character to it. And then again, because of the idea of a temporary nature, we wanted it to remain kind of wood-like rather than, we've got a lot of other hardscape there and the steel containers. We also did consider looking at it as a metal fence, but we felt that was going to be not as friendly and a little more foreboding. And we didn't want it to be too tall. We always wanted it to define space, but not be something, we're not thinking of that as the big security fence. And 48 inches is required by ABC. So that was kind of the other piece of it. So we did consider a number of different alternatives. This one seemed to fit in the middle of cost, not the highest, not the lowest, and it had a character that the city agreed, and they also wanted it to be of something that was friendly.
Thank you very much. Great explanation. And then just another question, and thank you for clarifying who the owner and then the operator was. I lost that in the shuffle somewhere. So my question is really, since it's set up as a temporary structure and there's really only the restroom in the bar area, is there going to be signage on the site for residents to contact Mr. Diaz if they have challenges at the site? Much like you would if I've got a challenge with one of the building operators, restaurant operators, you see their name, you can walk in their door, you can get in touch with them relatively easy through Yelp or whatever the case may be. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to provide the public with access to the operator.
Chair Kincaid, this is Paul Osmondson. The future residents of both urban, the affordable and the market rate will absolutely have the phone number and the contact information for the tenant. The property management from Mid-Penn, they have my cell phone number, so they can call me anytime. And I have Octavio Diaz's cell phone number, so there will be continuous involvement by the CDC for many, many years. But when those residents are there, we'll absolutely be sure that they have an ability to contact the operator.
Thank you very much. And those are the end of my questions. Anybody else before I switch over to the appellant? All right. Oh, Eric.
Sorry, I just thought of it. Just to confirm, there will be no amplified sound on the premises, or there's no application and process for an amplified sound permit?
This is Paul Osmondson from the CDC. There's no current application for an amplified sound permit. I'm expecting that Mr. Diaz will, for special events, may very well want to have amplified sound and would pursue those permits on a case-by-case basis. At present, there is no proposal for amplified sound as part of the use authorization.
Okay, thank you very much. You will be back at us after we hear from the appellant. So now I would like to request that staff switch over to the appellant's presentation. And as they do that, I will remind the appellant that they have 15 minutes to make their presentation. I have the appellant as John Paulson, along with his legal counsel, Robert Nellison. And much like the applicant, if the appellant can state their name and relation to the appellant when they're speaking, that would help us out a great deal. So once the appellant starts speaking, we'll go ahead and start the clock, and I'll try and cut in about 5 minutes left in the presentation to give you an update.
Okay, are we ready? Hello. We are ready. Okay, hello. This is John Paulson. I am the appellant for this Monotto Food Court. Members of the Design Review, thank you for your time this evening hearing my appeal. And at least we're all at home safe. Before I start my statement, I've been listening to your presentation, and I want to go over what you said, the overall effect on surrounding properties and what in the past and currently occurs daily on the CDC property. I own the property adjacent to the east of this project. My tenants rely on parking on the CDC property for their customers where the project is located. By the way, it was mentioned the existing parking lot lights on the CDC property don't work. Haven't worked since the CDC property purchased it in 2011 and have fallen in disrepair. Okay, and my statement is of what's going on here today is the parking lot where the proposed food park is to be located continues to be a free-for-all. Already prior to approval, 3 food trucks are operating there daily. Along with them are other food vendors attracted by the food trucks, operating out of the trunks of their cars, push carts, etc. An unregulated flea market is set up all over the CDC's parking lot. In fact, 2 food trucks were there today and a little flea market going on. Where has the CDC, the owners of the property and applicant, been this entire time? Although the CDC is just a few miles away, no staff has ever been there to move the squatters along. MidPenn's response to my comments dated December 10th, 2019 states, the CDC will continue to employ a roving security guard to remove unauthorized vendors. This is totally untrue. There has been no security guard removing unauthorized vendors before MidPenn's December 10th, 2019 response, and it continues even today. There are no sanitation facilities provided for the food trucks on site, of which one is the applicant or was operator. The vendors working out of their trucks and their customers that the CDC by their own negligence are allowing. Surely during this COVID-19 pandemic, the CDC would not allow these unsanitary conditions to persist on their property. According to news reports, Hispanics comprise 75% of COVID-19 cases in Sonoma County. Roseland is predominantly Hispanic. Is the CDC's indifference and recklessness contributing to this? Now, here's what happens daily. The customers that are attracted to these food trucks and unlicensed vendors working out of their car trunks are using the Andy Lopez mural, which is located right next to my buildings.
Next picture, next slide. Please go through the slides.
I don't know the slides.
Thank you. Please go through them.
If the appellant
just zip through them. Just shoot them. Just zip through. Keep going. Next one.
Okay.
Yep, that's what it looks like. Vomit, excrement, urine.
Is an unregulated and unmonitored screened off open air urinal, open air toilet. The CDC turns a blind eye to all of this, but I can't. It's an ongoing problem that stinks and is unsanitary. I'm not clear who the applicant really is. It's not the operator of the food truck. At the last appeal, a question was asked, where's the food truck owner applicant to answer our questions? Benjamin Wickham of the CDC said the CDC is the applicant. Is the CDC the applicant or is Mid-Penn? Either one, the food trucks are on their own, unsupervised, and certainly if it's approved, will continue. If it's Mid-Penn's, they are located in the South Bay. I've never seen representatives from Mid-Penn policing the CDC site and moving vendors who have just set up shop along the property. So who will monitor Menotti Food? History shows the absentee landlord, CDC, doesn't care. Mid-Penn is too far away and they just don't care. In addition, adding alcohol to the mix with no landlord supervision is inviting disaster. It is apparent to me that the CDC doesn't consider the safety of the residents and community of Roseland or the adjacent owners. What's Mid-Penn's goal? Their only focus seems to be the finish line, profits at the expense of Roseland, leaving the ongoing disaster to the people and businesses, my businesses, to deal with in their wake. Finally, any temporary use cannot be located on a parking site as there's governed by a recorded and prescriptive easement between the CDC and my property. Any temporary use must be located to reduce parking congestion and be located on the existing slab of the former Albertsons Lucky site, which is double or triple the size of the proposed project. And that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay. Please, this is Robert Nellison. Please scroll through the photos as I'm talking so the board can see the conditions that John's been talking about. No one at the design review board would tolerate the current condition next to their business or home. It is extremely racist and elitist to allow the CDC and Mid-Penn, which have demonstrated their incompetence, to continue with its absenteeism, which it will unless there are no consequences. I always wondered why the city of Santa Rosa had no interest in preserving the tax-paying entity of Roseland Village and its Hispanic patron-serving businesses and Hispanic-owned businesses. Why the city of Santa Rosa was so indifferent historically to preserving the rule of law. Today's Press Democrat article exposed the $22 million reason for the partnership between the city of Santa Rosa and its rubber stamping of the South Bay Mid-Penn project. How with a straight face can anyone believe the city of Santa Rosa, as judge, jury, and executioner, will not advance its own interest in dumping the high-density, parking-deficient, traffic nightmare-generating abomination within the slum of Roseland that it has created? All John Paulson ever asked for was for Mid-Penn and its partners to maintain the deeded and historical easements. Impinging on these will result in further delay and more litigation, including against the city of Santa Rosa. It is good that the 27-foot access easement has been promised to continue by Mid-Penn. Now all they have to do is continue to provide the parking that is a deeded easement. They can do it very easily by locating the Plaza Temporal on the cement slab that we see there right now. The good news is I agree that Ms. Meads has done a very good job of advancing the city's interest. What was ignored by the zoning administrator is a unanimity. Everybody unanimously spoke against this plan. 2/3 of them were Spanish speaking. What I want to know is why you're so willing to disenfranchise the Hispanic population of Roseland, who do not want to see this there, who do not want to see it with a 4-foot tall pig wire fence that is not going to stop the abuse of the property. If Mid-Penn and its partner, the city of Santa Rosa, gave a damn about Roseland, they would have listened to the unanimous objections. If anybody thinks 2 restrooms is adequate for a full-time, full-service, hard liquor bar and 99 patrons crammed within the pig pen, they are absurdists. In what universe are 2 restrooms going to be adequate for 99 people, a hard liquor bar, and 3 food trucks? There has been no roving security guard. This is a blatant falsehood. I would like to see a contract for the roving security guard and any proof of regular security. The existing parking adjacent is to remain. This was stated in writing in the mid-pen letters of June 17th this year and December 10th last year. Existing parking to remain houses possible if the Toady, My Toady, and Pigpen Bar occupied the current parking that is clearly, visibly, completely used in the photographs that you have seen, which I asked to be scrolled through. So John Paulson is asking the design review board to do the two things that in its role as the arm of the city of Santa Rosa, it is certainly not going to do, but we are asking the design review board to do these two things. Number one, grant the appeal conditionally and allow the CDC, MidPen, and the city of Santa Rosa 6 months to demonstrate that it can properly operate even a parking lot with minimal sanitation that you would expect in your neighborhood and next to your business, and that any permitted food trucks show their permits and their insurance as promised in the attachment to this board and the presentation, and that it provide the security, including for this and any permitted uses. Second, that the board grant the appeal conditionally to allow the CDC, MidPen, and its partner, the city of Santa Rosa, 6 months to provide plans for the My Toady Food Park and Pigpen Bar to be located in such a way as to not violate the clearly existing easements, which are necessary for the businesses which have been there for over 64 years. 64 years the businesses have operated and continue to operate today only because of the deeded and historical easements that this board has to take into account as an existing neighborhood use. I don't know if John has any further questions. I don't know if you've actually shown all of the pictures that were provided by John, including the one provided today.
We have about 4 minutes left in the presentation. We've seen several photographs scrolled through several times now, and I'm not certain that they were all of the photographs provided because I don't know what was provided, but we've seen several.
Well, if I could just comment on the photo that's on the screen on the left-hand side, there is a white van that's parked on the former sidewalk in front of the Lucky Store. That is lined up, especially on the weekends, but today as well, with 3 to 5 vendors of food, masks for COVID virus protection, flea markets. It's a free-for-all there. There's no guards. There's no CDC showing up. There's no MidPen showing up.
The pictures are not in the
There's no sanitation. That's why the people are using the cement for their own waste products. Where is the security?
Bureau.
Where's the sanitation?
There are 2 pictures missing.
There are some pictures missing, but I wanted the design review board to know what I've been going through on my property, trying to maintain it since the CDC has bought it since 2011. It's been a nightmare. And now they're cramming on this overloaded affordable housing and market rate housing that takes into account 0 parking spaces at peak time for my customers. 0. Their own traffic study says it. That's in the future. But if this food court was located on the Lucky Store, I would withdraw the store pad. I would withdraw my appeal at this point. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulson and Mr. Nelson. Your voice is important to us, so we thank you for the presentation and the historical happenings at the current property. Questions for the appellant? Board Member Wicks, questions?
It's probably a question that goes back to the planner. As I was listening to the appellant's presentation, I'm unclear as to where this lucky pad is. As memory serves me, that was a alpha beta at one time. Is that the same pad that the alpha beta was located at? Okay. Sherry, could you show us where that pad is in location or relationship to where the proposed Mikado and Plaza is located?
Certainly. If we could go to my slide, actually any of the slides that show the site plan, how about the temporary and long-term access and circulation plan? It's the site where the mural has been painted on the ground in recognition of Andy Lopez's death.
This is the host. If you can just tell me when to stop.
Okay. We can stop there. Go back, please. If you see the bright, colorful spot within the blue parcel area. Yes.
Yes, thank you. That
and that area has been approved on the tentative map for housing.
okay, so that's where the future in phase 1 or phase 2 of the future housing, or do you know?
I believe the phase 2, but I would rather have the applicant answer that question.
That will be the location of the market rate housing. This is Rick Williams.
That's my question.
Thank you. Board Member Weigel, questions for the appellant?
No questions.
Thank you. Board Member Sharon, questions for the appellant?
Just a question regarding the circulation discrepancies and the measurements. Just a question for the appellant of a lot of your presentation dealt with the current conditions of the site. Wondering a little bit more about the proposed easement and right of way that the applicant has been talking about for access to that site and your objections to it.
This is Robert Nellison.
Either Mr. Paulson or Mr. Nellison.
Can you hear me now?
You're a little bit shy on the volume.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The existing circulation and the circulation that has existed since 1956, when the buildings were being constructed and Hugh Cotting and John's father recorded the confirmation of the existing access, had a 27-foot wide circulation in the front of their buildings and a equally wide circulation in the rear of the buildings for the commercial trucks to drop off. For example, the grocery store, large trucks delivering groceries every day. The market rate housing that is proposed is simply going to destroy the commercial access in the back. There would be no way of driving a truck back there. The commercial or the patrons access in the front, you see, they drive between the building and the parking lot. So that is what we're going to go to war over, because you can't have patrons who can't drive in the front of the stores, and you can't have delivery trucks not deliver in the back of the store. And I would note that Mission Housing was first brought in by the county, and Mission Housing was given the deeded easement, and they actually honored the easement when they designed the buildings. They designed them so you could still drive trucks in the back and do commercial deliveries. And when the city bought the property, they intentionally withheld the deeded easements from the appraiser, who noted that although he was provided with no deeded easement, it was clear to him that there were access easements that had to have been at least prescriptive or historical. And he specifically noted that in the appraisal. Now, alternatively, if the parking is allowed to be placed on the cement pad by the CDC to make up for any lost parking where the Metodi pig pen is going to go to block off that easement, we would also have no objection to that.
Okay, thanks for a little clarification. As I understand your concerns about the future and the affordable housing, but in terms of exactly what's in front of us today, the circulation that is proposed, so it sounds like it satisfies for this specific hearing today. The 27-foot and the 25-foot have been satisfied. Is that correct?
The access, yes, but not the parking, and that's why we're talking about. You have to replace whatever parking is put on those. You can see the parking spaces. You can see that they've been lined out. That's the way they've been. I've only known about the Roseland Village since 1983, 84. John was born in Roseland. Would walk with his father across the street, Sebastopol Road, to the shopping center that his dad had built. And he can go back to the early 1960s. As far as the existing parking is exactly what the parking was in the early 1960s, and the parking lines were refreshed by cotting the bars, and the county even has maintained the parking lot. So if the parking is going to be removed from the existing parking, it needs to be replaced where the Lucky stores are. Pad is Lucky's, Albertsons, Alpha Beta.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify with the scope of what we're hearing today. So, but thanks for that clarification.
Board Member Golsog.
Thank you. So, Mr. Paulson, prior to this project coming forward, there have been a lot of problems with the same issues in that parking lot, whether it's food vendors, flea market, Camp Michaela. What is CDC's response even prior to this project coming forward? I mean, have you been reaching out to them over the years or just since this project got started?
Well, this is Bob Nellison, and I'm waiting for John either to get unmuted, or I can tell you that I've been actively involved since before 2000. John has made repeated pleas, and I have written letters to the county to police the parking lot, maintain the parking lot, respond on an ad hoc basis. If I send 3 letters, they will do something. Short of 3 letters, they don't do much. You can see from the dollar store debris, that's been a continuing problem. As John pointed out, they've made no effort to light the parking lot. They didn't maintain the lights. They did do some parking lot repair after multiple requests going back to 2000.
No, let's not forget the homeless camp that was allowed there. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. It's you just give up. It's just an ongoing, unanswered problem. It's just a hands-off whole problem that the CDC has had since 2011. Nothing ever happens there. They don't maintain their property. I had to get after them about the drive coming in off of West Avenue. There were holes in there in their parking lot. Mr. Nelson had to send them several letters with pictures before they even fixed the parking lot. And that's part of the easement. You got to maintain the parking lot.
That was the only question I had was, you know, I feel bad for you. It's very difficult having an absentee landlord managing a property adjacent to you that's non-responsive. But the design review board, and I think, you know, again, our purview here is the design of the project. You know, it's not in our purview to penalize the county for them not being responsible.
Well,
you know, we can't regulate security, insurance. We're more focused in regards to, and certainly there's impact to the neighbors, but I think a lot of these items are out of our reach, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. But the reason I'm bringing it all up is because if past performance is any indication of the future, you're going to permit the same thing. And with this food, with the food trucks, if they're not supervised, not by the food truck owner, but by the landlord, the county or Mid-Penn, it's going to be it's going to continue to be a free for all.
Thank you.
Got it.
Board Member Weigel, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize, Scott. I thought I did have a question, and as we were, the other board members were asking questions, one came to mind. And I think I just kind of forgot about it, and I apologize. I have this might be a question for the applicant, but it might also be a question for Bill in terms of a process. So I noticed that in our packet here, attachment 9, 10, and 11 have to deal with an ongoing legal dispute with a lawsuit that's been filed, and then also has a weigh-in associated with it from, it appears the county council has delivered an opinion. And so I'm just curious how that ties into this in terms of perhaps what action we're taking tonight, or if perhaps the appellant wanted to elaborate a little bit on the purpose of that lawsuit. I think that'd be helpful for me trying to kind of unpack some of the components about what's going on here.
Sure, Board Member Weigel, members, this is Bill Rose. We have a number of staff present tonight. I failed to mention that earlier. We have city engineering staff, traffic engineering staff, park staff, in addition to planning. We also have staff from the city attorney's office. So I'm certainly not going to offer any legal direction here, but I defer to our city attorney office as well as the applicant's team. And I believe you're correct, as county council is also present. So I would defer those questions to those particular individuals.
Thank you, Bill. And this is Ashley Crocker, Assistant City Attorney. Can you all hear me? Okay. Just a few things just in general on the easement. Our office has reviewed the easement. We reviewed this and the grounds for appeal back during the original application for the entitlements for the Roseland Village project. And I want to make a couple notes that the easement does not identify specific parking spaces or access locations on the CDC or the Paulson property. And also, just as this is in response to some of the things I've heard, I wanted to address the easement does not restrict the allowable uses on the CDC property or the Paulson property. And then to directly respond to your comment, Ms. Meads noted at the outset that the city is not party to the easement. It is, in fact, a private agreement between the CDC and Mr. Paulson. Mr. Paulson did file a lawsuit against the CDC, asserting, among other things, I believe, a violation of the reciprocal easement. That case is currently pending in the Sonoma County Superior Court. The city is not a party to that litigation, as it's not a party to the easement agreement. And as Ms. Meads had also stated, I believe at the outset, and I want to reiterate that the board's authority to take action this evening is not limited by the easement or by the pending litigation. And whatever is the outcome of the litigation, obviously, will be enforced upon the parties. And if you have any more questions, let me know.
I think answered my question.
Okay, if the applicant wants to jump in on anything else that they may know, that's fine, but okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the appellant or clarifications? Okay, seeing none. Again, thanking the appellant for their presentation, very thorough and respectful and very much appreciated. And so now we'll turn it back over to the applicant. They will have 10 minutes to respond to the appellant presentation. And I think you've heard some of the questions that have kind of been circulating. And so if you want to expound on any of those, please feel free to do so. I'll go ahead and once we get some people unmuted and start talking, I'll start the clock. But again, 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair Kincaid. This is Paul Osmondson, Special Projects Director for the CDC. Since we acquired the property in 2011, we've torn down several of the previously retail buildings, the bowling alley and the dry cleaner. And we also tore down the portion of the Alpha Beta Lucky that was on our portion of the property. We've continued the Dollar Tree as a tenant. We think they're a pretty good tenant. They provide a service. And the other part of the way we use the site is we built a community center in the other part of the Dollar Tree building where the Sonoma County Library and the Boys and Girls Club have been operating community service uses. We issue temporary use permits and special use permits for nonprofit and community users to use the property, the parking lot on a temporary basis, as well as events, public meetings, community groups, etc., in the portion of the building that's occupied by the library and the Boys and Girls Club. The food trucks that are in the parking lot in the middle, in one of the slides that were shown, were issued temporary use permits by the CDC. They have their Sonoma County Health Department operating permits. They have insurance. And so we did authorize up to 3 trucks for Mr. Diaz to temporarily use the middle of the site. We have engaged a professional property manager, Eugene Berger Management Company, to manage the property. And they employ a series of vendors, including Weinstein Security and AJ Janitorial. So when things are brought to our attention by neighbors or by anybody, we try to respond as best as we can. We call the security guard. They do provide roving security, but they probably aren't there as often as people think they should be. So we do manage the property to the best of our ability. What we're really trying to do is prepare it for future redevelopment. I'm going to ask Octavio Diaz, who is the operator, to make a short presentation now. He is on the at the meeting, and he'll address some of this. So the use of the property has been temporarily for the benefit of the public. When we have, I will tell you that on occasion, recently there was a protest on the site that was not permitted by the CDC. We elected not to move them off the site because we felt it was better to let the community have a voice and have the opportunity to express their opinions about current situation. And it also happened to be the 20th, Andy Lopez's 20th birthday. We're happy to report that there was no vandalism and no significant increase in trash or other problems. I'm going to ask Octavio Diaz to make a short presentation and explain how he intends on operating the site. You on, Octavio?
Octavio, this is the host. Can you hear us?
We can hear you. If he's not ready to, I'll try to get him to chime in. The back portion of the site is fenced off for security purposes because we are undertaking a environmental cleanup ordered by the State Water Resources Control Board. There's contamination in the groundwater, and we have secured a $2.5 million grant. And so that portion of the site is being prepared for future development. Octavio is ready. If you just unmute yourself, you can talk, Octavio. Octavio, you have to raise your hand and unmute your microphone.
Hi, this is Ashley Crocker, Assistant City Attorney again. I just wanted to verify if Octavio is part of the team that is to be presenting, or whether it would be more appropriate for him to call in as a member of the public. If you could just verify, I didn't have him listed as a member of your team. If you could just clarify that for us.
At this point, we prefer to have him part of the team, I think, if that's okay.
Okay, if you can access him, then we can go ahead.
Octavio is the host. You are unmuted. You just need to speak into your mic or connect a mic if you don't have one. Currently, it shows that you do have a microphone that operates and you are unmuted.
He's still trying to unmute his microphone. I'll keep talking. We feel that the presence of Notre Mira will significantly increase the amount of supervision that is put onto the site, at least between now and when we start construction of the public improvements. And Octavio is also a member of the Roseland community, and he goes by the site frequently and has already started to engage with the local vendors and start to prepare for his presence on the site. We're extremely happy about having him there because a large vacant parking lot does present challenges. We've been doing the best that we can with the resources that we have to try to control the situation. We have been focusing our efforts on making the site available for public use. That is the majority, predominant use of the property is for nonprofit and community-oriented uses. Octavio still can't quite get on. Is he unmuted? He says he can't, he's not able to get on.
Yes, at this time he is unmuted. It does not look like he has a microphone installed. It might have been when he entered this Zoom meeting, he needed to give himself access to a microphone prior.
Should we just have him?
Raising and lowering his hand, there's nothing we can do on our end.
Should I just have him talk during the 3 minutes then? Is that okay?
If he's part of the applicant team, he is not allowed to call in as a member of the public.
Okay. I don't know how to get him to mute his.
Call in by cell phone and we can give him the same permissions that way if he's not able to do it through the video conference.
Chair Kincaid, this is Bill Rose. This might be an opportunity to take a quick break to see if we can get some of these technical issues worked out.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. It is 6:29, so we'll call it 6:40. We'll be under recess until 6:40.
Hey, Scott, if we have Mr. Diaz fixed at the end of their presentation, I'd like to ask him some questions as well, since he's part of the applicant team.
Chair K, this is the host. We are ready when you are.
Great. Well, then we will go ahead and reconvene the meeting after our recess. And staff was able to get Mr. Diaz to be able to speak to us. So I had the applicant team with about 4 minutes remaining. So if we can keep it to 4 minutes, that would be great. Turn it back over to the applicant team.
Thank you, Chair Kincaid. Octavio, or you can make your response.
This is Octavio Diaz. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, board members. Thank you for your time. And Andy, Sherry, and Paul, and Rick, great job doing the presentation. I appreciate all the hard work that has been put into this project. We are very excited, and I have nothing but great and good things to say about this project. I want to focus on most of the feedback that has been said about the insurance, trash, and security, but we are looking forward to make it a better part of the community in the Roseland. And we will enhance it with bringing some of the best Sonoma County food, utilizing local ingredients from local farmers, seafood, red meat, poultry, you name it. I've been operating restaurants for many, many years in Sonoma County. I have a restaurant in the East Bay as well. And as you know, high-end restaurants now we're facing a challenge in the next 2 years. So I believe this is the future in the food industry, the outdoor dining, al fresco. And we are just really thrilled and excited to bring more jobs to the Roseland. I come from a very background of service, food, and I want to bring that to Roseland to help the community that's already there, enrich it more with food and high standard. So the other businesses bring their level up with a higher standard in service and quality of food, and also make it part of the vibrant community and culture. I happen to be Latino, and I'm not new to this area. My first home was purchased in the Roseland area, and I know Roseland. I've been living in Roseland for many years. I moved out of Roseland, sold a house, but I just want to thank you for your time and make sure that you make the right decision. You saw the plan. We're going to have security to oversee the traffic in and out. We are going to have operations manager to oversee this project. We're going to create between 15 to 20 jobs. We're going to also increase the pay for cooks and people that work serving in the food industry to make it so that people feel proud where they work. And as you can see, this area, it's not perfect. It's a broken window of Roseland, as I call it. It's the broken window in the car. And by us going in there, once it's completed, I can see a lot of improvements. I can see a lot of people taking pride. I have had owners of businesses that I do business with in Roseland come to me, and they're very excited that we're going in there with mitote. And basically, mitote is what we're doing tonight. We're talking shop, but you can be good shop or bad shop, closing the deal or doing business. So that's what that really means. And the food park is just bringing all the Latin culture, including other cuisines, to mitote. There's going to be a rotation of 4 trucks. And I say there was 3, but with one of ours to serve alcohol, it's 4. Alcohol is going to be managed day to day. We're not going to serve somebody more than 2 or 3 drinks. we'll probably have a 2-drink minimum per person. We'll have security to make sure that we have the TIPS program, proper training for our staff. So I'm not really worried about the operational training aspects of it. Those are what I do. So in terms of security and trash and all this, it's an ongoing issue that we have right now. We're trying to maintain that area cleaner, but you're right. It does look like a flea market, and a lot of those vendors don't have a permit. And that's a raising concern that we will clean that up as we go. Most of the feedback that we get from those vendors is that the owner of Camacho Market currently now gives them permission to be there. So that's the answer that we get. I spoke with somebody last weekend and they said, oh, we got the okay from the Camacho Market. So we haven't really had a chance to speak to the Camacho Market about that, but most of the vendors are right next to their stores.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and stop you there for the time limit, and we'll go ahead and if you can stay on the line. I know that at least one board member had direct questions for you.
Sure, absolutely.
So,
thank you for your time. Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Go ahead and bring it back to the board. And I know that board member Goldschlag already expressed interest in asking the question. So we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the questions I had is on the north side of the project. So it's designated as the family area to the north of the picnic tables. And I'm actually looking at slide 9 of the applicant presentation, of the, which presentation? The updated applicant presentation. So there's an area there that is marked as a family area. It's multicolored, but it has a couple planter boxes kind of dividing it from where the picnic tables are. But there doesn't appear to be anything in there. There's no picnic tables, no playground. So what use is that area going to be for? You might have to unmute them, host.
The applicant, just as a point of clarity, the applicant and appellant team both have the ability to mute and unmute themselves at their discretion. We just ask that they stay muted until called on, but they have the ability to mute.
Thank you.
Rick, this is Paul Osmondson. Rick, do you want to answer the question about the usage of the multicolored area in the family zone?
Yes, thank you, Rick Williams. So originally, we are considering that area a little bit more of a stage area. So it's an active play area. It's not raised, but it's an active play area so kids can kind of run around kind of a little bit more in that area away from where the picnic tables are. So it's a little bit more of a active area for kids to run around, but still be visible and everything as part of the overall eating environment. And it's directly across from the food trucks. It's only, it has a different lighting pattern rather than strings just going straight across. And it has a little bit of the trees, but it doesn't have any play equipment, so to speak. It is still part of the fenced in enclosure area, but it's really just to give an area that isn't just eating, that the kids can run around in as they decide to come back and grab something from the food and then run back out and play with their friends.
Hey, Rick, this is Paul. Can you make sure that on that diagram, the light white area through the middle of the site, the area where the bar and the restrooms are located, has a separate fence. It is separated by ABC requirement from the rest of the site. So people technically are not supposed to leave that ABC area. There'll be a fence that runs along the northern side of the ABC area that separates it from the family area.
Correct.
Yeah, I had mentioned that in the presentation.
Thanks.
And then, Mr. Diaz, is that what your intent is with that open area?
Yes, that is correct.
And then what about putting bands there or live music?
As we mentioned before, we would have to ask for permission from the city We have asked for at least 8 to 10 events that we want to do per year, but this would have to be during the day events with minimal sound systems and also with permission of the city of Santa Rosa.
Okay. And then my other question is in regards to the ABC and alcohol in the bar. I heard somebody mention earlier in the presentation that it would be a full bar, so all types of alcohol, not just beer.
It's going to be a beer and wine selection, as well as liquor, crafted mezcal and tequila crafted cocktails. But we would have to limit those to 2 per person.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do that. I've never seen that done where you can limit how many drinks somebody gets at one order, but not throughout the day. That's extremely difficult to.
Right. Well, we have to manage that in our area, and we have to have a server service that area for just alcohol within that fence that Paul was describing. So we will always have supervision at the bar, behind the bar, and also outside of the bar, making sure that we have a proper trainer server following up the tips training, which is related to the alcohol consumption.
So if the goal is to make this a family community location, why the need for hard alcohol? Why not just an ABC license with beer and wine only?
We have currently a 47 type license that we own. It was transferred from a restaurant in Healdsburg. And I believe that in order to make a profit nowadays, more than anything, we have to sell alcohol. You make 70 cents and $1 versus 10 to 15 cents on food. So you can figure that just selling food and beer and wine, it's going to be difficult. But alcohol does make a difference on your profit and your sales, so that we can operate at a full capacity like a restaurant. We're just outside, not inside dining.
So the profit margins are lower if you're not serving hard alcohol?
That is correct.
And wine?
That is correct.
Okay. So just so I can summarize what you're saying is there's going to be at least 10 events per year with an amplified sound permit that may include music, and there's going to be full service bar, and
correct.
The server is going to try and limit drinks to 2 per person, but the goal of having the hard alcohol is to increase the profit margin, but you're limiting the consumption.
That is correct. And we have to do that by table size service to make sure that 1 or 2 or 3 servers are managing that properly. Just like if you were sitting down in a restaurant, we would have to be a full service patio with staff watching and monitoring their stations throughout the night or during their shifts.
Okay.
Adjacent with security.
And then my last question is, with events, music going on at that location, how is it regulated in regards to other people coming in outside of that immediate project? So into the parking lot, adjacent to the project, bringing in other food vendors, food carts, people bringing in their own food, which becomes a trash issue, and then as well, it becomes very difficult to control alcohol when people are bringing their own there.
Right. That's a great question. So everybody that's inside the fenced park, Mitote Park, everybody has a station. So there'll be 3 plus our truck, 4 trucks permitted with insurance, the health department permits, following all the rules and regulations of the health department. And I would also monitor that once a month, just like a health department does, and just to keep us away from COVID-19 and ensuring that we're sending that message to our customers, because we do want customers to come in there, families. We want to be a friendly family environment for everybody, not just the Latino market in Roseland. We want to open it up for everybody, I would have to hire a operator manager to help me with that as well. But from the outside, we have to hire security on busy days, nights. We would have to have 2 people on board on outside and inside, 1 person at each entrance to monitor that regularly. And if you have no permits from us there, you can't be there. And we'll post some signs inside and out, but we'll also have regular monitoring security-wise to ensure that they're not other vendors trying to sell their food outside or inside without permits, without our permission.
Thank you. Those were all the questions.
Thank you.
Chair Kincaid, this is Bill Rose. If I can just jump in for a quick second here. I just want to remind the board that some of the discussion here, although I think it's informative, it's helpful for the full context of the proposal. Some of this is getting a bit into the use. We don't have this particular proposal that's being discussed is not before us tonight, nor is it before the city right now. We don't have an application for that. So I just wanted to remind the board that that all of the things that are being discussed, we'd have to weigh that against the code to find out what the proper permit path would be. And we have not done that because we simply don't have an application in at this time.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Some of the questions are going to go towards my comments in regards to design, the design of and layout of the project. So such as that open area, fencing, et cetera. So I appreciate it.
Yep, fully understood. I just wanted to give that background.
Okay, Board Member Wicks, any questions for the applicant based on their response?
No questions.
Board Member Wagle, questions?
Yeah, actually, Eric's comments kind of, and actually something the appellant said, I just did a quick back of the napkin calculation from a plumbing code standpoint. And so I guess it's just a question here. So the plaza is about 12,000 square feet. So if you treat that as a A2 occupancy, it's like 848 people at 15 square feet a person. We all know how to do that as architects. So obviously there's a modification being proposed to that with fixed seating or something along the building code. So my question is kind of tied into the bathroom component. For 99 people, the plumbing code requires 3 toilets, not 2. So there's only 2 permanent toilets indicated, but then I'm also seeing additional portable toilets being provided for events. If I could get some clarity from the design architect, that'd be helpful.
Yes, this is Rick Williams. So we've been working on the number of toilets required by the city, and that's how we limited it to the 99 occupancy capacity. We also felt that the numbers from the assembly don't really work in an environment like this. So we're putting in our building code application, our building application for permitting, and have discussed that. But we feel that the interpretation and the square footage of the areas and the circulation areas and the areas that are covered by removed from the area lead us to having a 99 occupancy and the 2 restrooms. If the building department determines that they think we need a greater number than that, then we will provide an additional one if required. The temporary facilities was if there happens to be an event where they anticipate having additional ones. They the city asked us to note where we would accommodate that in the plan. And so we placed those in that location if required for an event that was covered a day or a weekend or something like that.
Yeah, and then I guess, so tied to that, so, and this is probably just a functional component, and maybe I'm not understanding the ABC license, but so the bathrooms are in the fenced-in area that's required for the ABC license, right? So you get your 48-inch high fence, with your gates because it's supposed to be 21 and up only, I'm assuming, for the requirements for the license. And yet you've got a family area to the north with no restrooms. So are the family area folks expected to go through the gate into the ABC to the restrooms? I guess that's why I was asking about total restroom count, the temporary restrooms, kind of all that. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. The issue of the fence is not so much to keep it all provides food, and it's just like if you go to a brew pub or something like that. If it provides food, then it's not limited to an over 21.
Correct. It's all ages.
And you're allowed to, and families are allowed to be there, and children are allowed to be there. The issue with the fence is it prohibits the alcohol from moving out of that area. So it's keeping them in. It's not preventing family members from being as part of the overall Matoti Park.
Cool. That answered my question. Thanks.
Board Member Sharon, question?
No more questions. Everything's been covered at this point.
Great. I only had one question in regard to the newly proposed parking lot. It doesn't appear that that parking lot is secured. And as such, it will just be up to the operator tenant to police that as designated parking for this park, i.e. the neighbor could certainly use all this parking without any repercussions, or is there, is this private parking towaway zone?
This is Paul Osmondson from the CDC. This parking would be available for visitors to the neighboring property, as well as visitors to Matoti and the rest of the site. So it would be public, it would be parking for customers and invitees to the properties, to the both Paulson's property and to ours.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so that concludes the applicant's response to the appellant presentation. At this time, we're going to go ahead and open up the public comment hearing. As we've done in the past, we'll start with live public comments. So those who are on call or on the Zoom can raise their hands and we'll take them as we go. We'll be giving you 3 minutes each. As a reminder, the applicant team and the appellant team who've already spoke on behalf of the team are ineligible, if you will, for public comment. After the live public comments, we will go to any voicemails that need to be played into record. And after voicemails, we will go into the reading of any emails that need to be read into public record. Those that were in our packets as far as communication already are on the record. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask staff to take public comment, opening public comment.
I think we're having some technical issues. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you can give us 1 second, Chair.
Sure.
Hi, Chair. I'm going to go ahead and call someone named Nelson first. We're going to give them a permission to speak, and they can unmute themselves when they're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Well, I just want to speak on behalf of Octavio Diaz. I know he does a lot for the community. He speaks of providing free lunches for the police department. As a matter of fact, he did that for the when the riot was happening. I mean, those, and he also talks about supplying food for Elsie Allen. So he is very involved. This is very important to him. I understand where he's coming from when he's saying that he wants to improve the grounds, especially in that area. And I see nothing but a benefit from this. I love to go to Sebastopol Road. I eat the food there. I see nothing but benefits from this. It looks beautiful. It is going to be a million times of an upgrade from what it is now. And I don't understand why it would be a little bit of backlash about trying to improve a community and make things new and upgrade things, especially if you're talking about buildings that have been around for a long time. I go to the Camacho Market, so I go to that area quite often, and I just want to send a positive message for him. And this is a good thing, and everyone should be up for improving the community, especially Latino, and someone that wants to be involved. And I would petition for somebody like that. And that's probably what I'm going to say. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, we have a few more hands raised. You can just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Next, we got Jorge in Oncencio. Same thing with everybody that has their hand raised. Once we give you permission to speak, you are able to unmute yourself. And once you start talking, we'll start the timer.
Okay. Hello, Design Review Board. My name is Jorge Inocencio. I'm a lifelong Roseland resident. I'm also a candidate for Santa Rosa City Council to represent this district. I'm speaking today to encourage the Design Review Board to deny the appeal and let the project continue on. The Roseland Village has been talked about now for over 10 years, and I think it is time to finally break ground. This plaza will be an improvement for Roseland, and I think that will drive further economic development along Roseland's primary business corridor. With that being said, I believe that the Design Review Board should look over the design of this plaza very carefully and think about the kind of change that this will create on Sebastopol Road. The design is good, but it could be excellent with a few changes. I think that there needs to be a place for current street vendors to be a part of this plaza. I also think that there should be more entrances. I think the family area would be better off with soft rubber floor, like the kind that is used on playgrounds. There should be plenty of trash cans, both inside and I think outside of the plaza, to mitigate some of the trash issues that neighbors are concerned about. Finally, I think there should be a water fountain on the site. And one last thing is that the space is currently being used as an informal meeting ground for various community activities. I think that there should be an open section to allow informal and community use, even when the food trucks are closed. If we remove this place that's currently being used as a community, what alternatives will there be? It has been, as I said, it's been long used as an informal center for community activities. So finally, I'd like to thank the Design Review Board and encourage the board to let the project continue while also improving the plaza design. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments and for running for City Council. Go ahead and take the next public comment when you're ready, Mike.
All right, next we have Jesus Guzman.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jesus Guzman. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for Generation Housing. I want to thank the board for today's hearing. We sent a letter earlier today, proudly endorsing this project. So I just want to offer a couple of brief follow-up remarks to that. A note on the use of this site. Plaza Temporal really does demonstrate, I think, a thoughtful use of this site during a time of transition. Mitote Food Park will serve as a centrally located neighborhood gathering space to foster an active and lively community use during construction of the adjacent development that's forthcoming. And rather than fence off the site during construction, I think this is a really exciting, innovative approach to this temporary use, and really can add value to the local neighborhoods, business, community, and residents. A couple of brief notes on the design. Plaza Temporal's design and color scheme acknowledges, I think, with the vibrancy of the local cultural heritage of the neighborhood, that draws inspirations from its residents, and it does offer a nod to the local culture. That's an important asset of this project. And I will also just note that right down the street, for example, La Tejanita, that has also a very bright color palette, I think mirrors very much, and I think is a nod to many other similar businesses along that same business corridor. So we do urge the board to support the project and deny the appeal. And I will lastly just offer a brief on a personal note, that as a Latino man, I did take umbrage with the disparaging comments from the appellant referring to the appellant referring to the project as a pig pen. That was a rather inflammatory comment. So I would urge the appellant to retract that comment that was rather distasteful. So to conclude, I just want to urge the board again to support this project and deny the appeal. Thank you.
And thank you for your time. Take the next public comment when you're ready.
And the next commenter is Pedro Avila.
Good afternoon, members of the board, and community members present. My name is Pedro Avila. I'm the Vice President of Student Services at Santa Rosa Junior College. And I'm here to express my support for the Mitote project. I want to say that Octavio Diaz is a former student of SRJC. He's a product of the JC, and we are very proud of him. He's also someone that I've gotten to meet well over the years, and I'm very impressed by his work ethic. But most of all, I'm very impressed by his love for the community. He's someone, and his family are someone they're always constantly giving to our community, and have always been strong supporters of the JC. So I just want to say that I support Octavio in this project without hesitation, and I encourage the board to vote in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and comments. We'll take the next public comment.
Chair Kincaid, this looks like nobody else has their hands raised at this time. We do have a voicemail comment though.
Okay, we can move on to the voicemail comment. However, if those who are participating want to speak live, please feel free to continue to raise your hand and we'll get back to you after we play the voicemail.
Just be 1 second, Kincaid.
Hi, I would like to voice my opinion on this public hearing for the Roseland Village project. I got a notice of a public hearing, and I was born and raised here in Santa Rosa, went to school here, graduated from high school here, went to JC, and so a lot of my friends as well. And this city looks so bad. It's so vile and disgusting. I don't even want to walk down the street. The homeless problem is out of control. It's disgusting. They're taking over the city, and there's nothing but trash, and they urinate everywhere. I mean, I think that we have a bigger fish to fry then starting yet another food truck over at the Sebastopol Road Dollar Tree parking lot. We have a homeless problem on that one corner by the transit, by the bus stop. To begin with, we don't need more. We don't need more trouble. I think that needs to be addressed and cleaned up before any of this other thing. Maybe a grocery store might be better utilized than apartments or whatever's planned over there. We don't need any more mom and pop shops or taco trucks. We need a grocery store. So with that said, thank you very much. And I really hope that you address the homeless problem. Thank you. Hi.
Chair Kincaid, that concludes our voice messages.
Okay, are we seeing any hands raised for further live comment?
Not at this time.
Okay, and do we have any emails to be read into the record?
Negative.
Okay. Give it about 30 more seconds. If you see any hands come up, we'll take them. If not, we'll move on.
They stacked the whole fucking day.
Hi, this is Jamie Troyer. I'm just letting you know that we do have someone who is a resident, a tenant on the Paulson property that is going to be calling in. Please stand by.
Just by way of comment, while we wait, I'm just going to go ahead and afford this public commenter the same consideration we afforded Mr. Diaz when we took a recess so that he could get on the phone. So.
Chairman Kincaid, while we wait, I have one more question for the applicant in regards to the fencing.
I'd rather keep public comment open and save the questions. Sorry. Also, point of clarification, Bill, if you could jump on and let me know if we need to pause because we lost board member Wagle and are currently lacking a quorum as I see it.
Yeah, we're trying to get his video restarted right now. So there he is.
Here we go.
Yeah, I had a glare back there and I broke the blind, so sorry.
We have a caller 1, caller 3, caller 3. We don't have any raised hands. I'll go ahead and unmute caller 1.
Is there a caller wishing to make public comment?
Caller, I believe if you press *9, it will raise your hand and we will know if you want to speak.
Hello, this is Allie Gaylord. I'm just calling in as a...
We had you for a minute there, Allie, and then we lost you.
Looks like our caller had dropped the line. If they can call us back, we won't be able to see this though, so hopefully they'll call us back.
Hello, caller.
No comments. No comments, please.
Hello, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello, I'm just a member of the public participating by phone. No comments.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
So at this time we have 2 phone calls in. They both have decided they're not going to do comment. We had a caller on the line that was trying to comment and they're no longer connected.
Okay. Well, I think we've given a fair amount of time for people to join and comment. So at this time, I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the board. Before we move into a motion and a second, go ahead and ask if there's any further questions for any of the parties, applicant, appellant, staff, before we bring it into comments. Drew, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify the 3 actions we have again. It's deny the appeal, accept the appeal and reject the project, and then also continue the project. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And the denying the appeal approves the project. It's always a little tricky when you do the motion to just remember the wording and what you're actually doing, but you got it right.
And in that regard, the easiest way to make sure the motion is correct is by reading the resolution if you so choose to move in that direction. Any other questions for staff, appellant, applicant, board member Goldschlag?
One simple last question. The perimeter fencing, is it the same perimeter fencing around the entire perimeter, the mesh and wood frame fencing, or is it different in a different area?
It's the same perimeter fencing around the entire area. The only area that has different fencing is the trash enclosure because it's taller and it's not transparent. So.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and for those who are new to our process as the design review board, we start out with a motion to take us one direction or another and follow that up with a second, and then we open up for discussion and friendly amendments, which can amend or consider to amend the motion that was made and on the table before us. So go ahead and bring it back to the board and ask if there is a motion.
I have a motion. Chair, continue. Yeah, I would like to move that we deny the appeal and uphold the zoning administrator approval of the minor design review application for the Plaza Temporal the Tote Food Park, the temporary plaza and gathering space, including a counter service restaurant, outdoor seating, alcohol service, customer restrooms, 3 dedicated spaces for rotating mobile food vendors, landscaping, and site improvements for the property located at 665 Sebastopol Road, APN 125-111-037, file number DR19-030. Waive the reading of the text.
Great. So we've got a motion on the table from Board Member Weigel. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Board Member Sharon. So now's the time where we talk about friendly amendments. Board Member Wicks, why don't we start with you? You can make comments, and in those comments, you can craft friendly amendments as you see fit.
All right, thank you, Chair Kincaid. I would support the motion that is before us. I believe that the appellant's pictures kind of drove home for me that the area is an area of blight and needs to be redeveloped. And I think this is a great and innovative way of starting that redevelopment and bringing some vibrant activity to this part of our community. I wish that some of the easements and stuff were cleaned up, but that's I don't really think that. I think that becomes more of a land use issue and a problem for the attorneys to wrap up. But I'm anxious to see the overall project of Roseland Village come before us, the other housing elements. I like the fact that in the last slide from the appellant that this isn't just a throwaway use in the overall project, that the plaza can be incorporated into the park that'll be next to it and also be associated with the Mercado. So I think it's a great use of the space currently and during construction and in the future. I think it kind of hits all 3 elements that make it a good project for me. I'm not used to reviewing projects that are temporary. Storage containers, kind of new for me, although I do have some experience with them. But I think maybe one of the friendly amendments I'd propose is that there was some sort of restriction on this in terms of its time. And I was hoping there was a use permit that was associated with it that would set a 5 or a 6 year limit, or once the rest of the project has been built out, that this use shifts to something else. So again, I'd be supportive of the motion before us on the floor and look forward to hearing from my fellow design review board members on their opinions.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to Board Member Goldschlag, since you weren't the motioner and weren't the second. Friendly amendments?
No, actually, I agree 100% with what Board Member Wicks said. I couldn't say it any better. I do wish there was a conditional use permit associated with it, but definitely need some improvement in the area. So you always have to take that first step. Thank you.
And I should have clarified at the get-go, I haven't heard any friendly amendments yet, but we have 2 different types of friendly amendments. One is consider and one is shall. Considers are just that, a consideration of the applicant, and as they move forward. Shall would be the applicant must do X, Y, or Z, and we always ask the applicant if that would be prohibitive for whatever reason in the project. So my friendly amendment would be that the applicant consider adding a second restroom storage container in the, sorry, I forget what we're calling the ABC area.
Family area?
Family area. Thank you.
The food and family area.
Food and family area. I think it creates better separation, you know, in what we've heard both from some of the board members and I think the community in general would appreciate that if they did not want to involve themselves in partaking in the alcohol consumption and did not want to expose their young family to that, that they don't need to travel into that area per se to use a restroom. And I also think that, you know, per Drew's comments earlier, you know, I see where you're getting at, you know, one restroom being okay, but I don't think it's going to hurt the project to have a couple. So that would be a consider. And again, it's just that, considered, not a mandate. I was happy to hear and happy to see that the parking lot was not fenced and that it could potentially still be utilized by the neighboring property owners, and a bit of a nod to the reciprocal easement. You know, again, that's to be battled out in the courts, but I think, you know, we could have easily seen a different application with a fence all the way around and a security gate for that parking. And that would have disturbed me a little bit. So you know, again, I think it already been commented on. I'll echo the fact that this is a great step forward for a blighted site and allows the transition to begin, which as one of the public commenters made, it's been in the making for 10 years, I'd say 30. And I'm also a lifelong resident, so I've seen it and been to this site numerous times. With that, did the second want to make any amendments to the motion?
No amendments. Just have a couple of comments.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think that this is it's a great project with it's a really nimble use of space that I think could be replicated in other areas, in other projects. I think it's you know, projects take a long time to actually happen, and I think that this is a very interesting and, as Henry said, innovative use of a space that's going to be impacted, and it's not closing it off the rest of the site from construction. It's actually carving out a space to have an immediate win in the project, and I think that it's got great programming. It's a combination of great programming, very well thought out infrastructure. I like the lights and the color. I like the kind of the painted pavement with the Roberto Burle Marx feel of this, you know, this really whimsical plaza. And I think that it's going to be great for families. I think it's going to be it'll attract a lot of people to this area that is going to also be, it's going to be a fascinating front row seat to this development that's happening there. That's going to be this revitalization that's happening. And so, yeah, I'm all for this style of nimble development. I did have a question also about the bathroom, the lack of a bathroom in the family and food zone. I think it's great to have a friendly amendment to consider, one in the northern part of the site. And I also think that the late correspondence that we got from the library had a very reasoned suggestion that the parties continue to talk with each other and keep the dialogue open and continue to try and be good neighbors to each other. And yeah, you know, she mentioned that she hopes that they attempt to resolve any concerns that are there. And I think that being that good neighbor, keeping things open, having the allowance for the parking area, you know, continue moving forward with that. There's gonna be a lot of other processes and things involved in terms of courts, but let's all try and make this site as maximized as possible. Thanks very much. I think it's a really interesting project.
Thank you, Board Member Sharon. Before I get to you, Drew, Board Member Wicks, you have something to add?
On the friendly amendment for considering an additional restroom, would that be in an additional container, or could that restroom be a gotta be careful here, a porta potty or a portable type restroom that was accessible? I know that could be an accommodation.
Yeah, so I'm not going to specify unless other board members feel strongly one way or the other. If I was the operator, I'd want a container because it's cleaner, easier to maintain, and it's way more attractive than a porta potty. But again, I'm not here to stifle the project financially, and I think that what I was after was just kind of equal opportunity for patrons on both sides of the ABC fence.
All right, well put.
To keep it open in general, would you just say to consider the options, consider multiple options for that, or?
Yeah, I think that it's just, consider another restroom on the other side so that people don't have to travel into the ABC area if they do not so choose.
If I could jump in here, just my opinion on that bathroom too. Scott, I really like the way that you're approaching this, but I think I would like language that says with a preference for another shipping container restroom in an alternating playful color.
I'm okay with that as far as a amendment to the friendly amendment. So Drew, you haven't had a chance to comment yet. So why don't you comment, and then you can recraft my friendly amendment and then choose to accept it or not.
Right. I think what I said is how I would want to do it personally. I think this is a great project too. I want to just take a minute to talk about something from my past that I think is kind of relevant here. I worked for a nonprofit in Dallas, Texas when I was fresh out of graduate school. And it was a nonprofit that dealt with low-income communities and helping them get back on their feet, build housing, and establish and keep senses of community. And they have something called the holding house model, where they renovate an entire street of homes. And what they do is they build one house, and it's called the holding house. And the different families on the street move into the holding house during construction of their home. And when I saw this project and the applicant was speaking about what this plaza is doing, it very much seems to me the public space version of a holding house, like I'm describing. And I think that's where the success of this project exists, because it's creating something that's going to be part of the Roseland Village development over time as the new housing is built, both the market rate and the affordable housing, the civic component, the new plaza, the adjacent Mercado. And then that all ties into what's going on with perhaps the Boys and Girls Club, which is down the road a little bit, and any other development that may occur. And so I think what Henry said in terms of this potentially being a catalyst, I think that's really exciting. And I really like kind of the thought process that the developers put together in terms of creating this kind of holding house, but for public space. And I think that's where the success of this project really exists. And it's not always going to be a food truck, Matote Park, right? It's not always going to have food trucks. It's going to be a place where people bring their kids to the park. It's going to be a place where people gather, because there's going to be 200 or whatever units of housing right next to it. And then there's schools, right? Roseland schools are very close to this, and a bunch of housing south of Sebastopol Road. So I think that's really exciting to me. So thank you very much for the project and the proposal. I really appreciate it. My only other comment in terms of a consider, I've got two of them. One would be some comments that I heard from the public would be for the applicant to consider some additional entries and exits from the plaza. I think they just need to take another peek at it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay. And then the last thing would be consider an alternate design for the arched entryway at the main entrance. I think what's really great about the project is it's taking playful elements of color and pop from around the area. And with the hog wire and wood fence, that's kind of a very Sonoma County aesthetic. It's something that we use on a lot of projects. We use it on schools, we use it on office buildings. It's very Sonoma County, so I think it makes a lot of sense. And then the arch entry just seems a little bit out of place to me. That it doesn't have that Sonoma County feel like some of the other pieces that they're proposing to do. I mean, the lights, funny enough, those string lights, they scream Sonoma County to me for some reason. I feel like everybody has those in their backyards in our county for some reason. So I think that would be the only thing, just consider an alternate design for the arched entryway. And with that, great project. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Great. So then I will go ahead and amend my friendly amendment for your consideration. The first friendly amendment would be to consider with a strong preference for another container bathroom, but consider an additional bathroom to the northern side of the property in the family and food fun area. And said container would be of a different but equally complementary color within the color scheme of the project. Then consider additional entries and exits, and consider an alternate design for the arched entry element. So those are three considers. Again, they're not mandated. They're for the applicant to play with, consider, and include or not include into the project. So those three considers as a friendly amendment. As the motioner, do you accept the friendly amendment?
I do.
And Board Member Sharon as the second, do you accept?
I do.
Great. With that, Patty, I would appreciate a roll call.
Okay, roll call vote.
Patty, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Bill Rose. I just wanted to jump in. I want to let the board know staff understands those, can fully implement those when the project comes in. Just wanted to get a double check with the applicant team that they understand, accept those conditions as well.
Very well. Would one of the members of the applicant team like to express their thoughts on the friendly amendments?
This is Paul Osmondson from the Sonoma County CDC. We do accept those suggestions. There's cost implications and management issues, but we'll definitely take them all under advisement.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Okay, with that, Patty, roll call, please.
Okay. Board Member Vicks.
Aye.
Board Member Weigel.
Aye.
Board Member Sharon.
Aye.
Board Member Goldschlag.
Aye.
Chair Kincaid.
Aye. And with that, we've reached unanimous approval. So thanks both to the applicant and the appellant and the staff. Appreciate everyone's time, energy, and effort in putting forth a public dialogue. Should thank the members of the public as well for their participation, both at our hearing here and prior hearings to express their thoughts on a meaningful community project. So with that, that concludes our public hearings for tonight. So we will move on to item number 7, board member reports. Do you have any board member reports to share? Not seeing anybody. With that, we'll move on to item number 8, department reports. Bill, do you or any of your staff have any department reports?
No department reports for tonight.
Okay. So again, thanks to everybody for your involvement. I appreciate all the staff that have been joining us on these calls. I think that having them available on these is critical to us, finding our way to resolutions on these public hearings. So with that, I bid everyone a happy Father's Day this weekend, and hope to see you on the next Zoom call. We are adjourned.